I've always been drawn to places that whisper secrets, where every creak of a floorboard makes your heart skip a beat. Today, I'm taking you inside the 8 scariest houses in America, and believe me, these aren't just stories, they are real, living nightmares. Standing in front of these abandoned walls, I felt chills crawl down my spine, and an unsettling weight pressed against my chest. Shadows moved where no one should be, and every room seemed to hold decades of fear, loss, and mystery. Get ready, because what you're about to see will make you question what's real, and what's haunting. If you love exploring the unknown and want to join me on more spine-chilling haunted adventures, make sure to hit that subscribe button and never miss a moment. 1. Amityville Horror House, Amityville, New York. I remember the first time I saw the Amityville house. Even from the street, it felt wrong. The air seemed heavier, almost suffocating, and the orange siding looked faded and lifeless under the gray sky. I had read all the books and stories about the DeFeo murders, but standing there made the horror feel real. My chest tightened, and a chill ran down my spine as if the house was watching me, silently judging my presence. I stepped onto the cracked pathway, and every footstep echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the empty street. The windows seemed darker than normal, almost black, and for a moment I felt like I wasn't alone. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just nerves. But deep down, I knew something lingered here, a heavy, unshakable energy that belonged to the past, to the night when 6 members of the DeFeo family were taken. As I circled the house, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters, and I felt my stomach twist. I imagined the Lutz family moving in months later, hoping for a fresh start, only to leave in terror after 28 days. Doors slamming on their own, footsteps in empty rooms, whispers that had no source. Standing there, I could almost feel those events. Replaying inside the walls, invisible but undeniable. I leaned closer to the front door, my hand hovering above the handle, heart pounding so loudly I could hear it over the wind. A sudden creak from upstairs made me freeze. I wanted to run, but fascination held me there, rooted to the spot. Shadows shifted across the walls, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing at the window, staring back. My skin prickled with fear, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Eventually, I walked away, my legs shaky, my mind racing. The sun had dipped lower, and the house seemed to darken with it, like it was breathing, alive with the memory of its past. Even now, thinking about that afternoon sends chills through me. The Amityville house is more than wood and paint, it carries the weight of tragedy, the echoes of lost lives, and a presence that refuses to fade. 2. The Hinsdale House, Hinsdale, upstate New York. The first time I stood in front of the Hinsdale house, I felt a strange shiver run down my spine. The house looked abandoned, yet it seemed alive in its silence. Overgrown weeds covered the yard, and the paint on the walls had peeled away decades ago, revealing the weathered wood beneath. I had read about the Dandy family fleeing in the 1970s, but being here made the stories feel real, like the fear they experienced still lingered in the air. As I stepped closer, the old porch groaned under my feet, each creak echoing through the stillness like a warning. I could feel the weight of the house's history pressing down on me, heavy and inescapable. The windows were dark, reflecting only the shadows of the surrounding trees, yet I could have sworn I saw movement behind the glass. My heartbeat quickened, and I hesitated, torn between the instinct to run and the curiosity that had brought me here. Walking around the perimeter, I noticed strange patterns in the dirt, as if someone had been moving here recently. A cold gust of wind swept through the broken shutters, and for a moment, I felt as if invisible eyes were watching my every step. Every creak, every distant sound made my skin crawl. I imagined the family that once lived here, terrified and desperate, leaving in a hurry while unseen forces followed them through the halls. I leaned closer to the front door, feeling the rough wood under my fingertips. A sudden knock echoed from inside, soft but deliberate, and my heart jumped into my throat. I spun around, but no one was there. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, reaching for me as if the house itself wanted to pull me in. Every step I took made me more aware of the presence lingering around me, a mixture of fear and fascination keeping me rooted in place. When I finally stepped back, the sun was beginning to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the property. Even as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house had marked me, that its energy followed me down the winding roads of upstate New York. Hinsdale House is more than a building, it is a silent witness to fear, a keeper of shadows, and a place that haunts you long after you leave. 3. Knickerbocker House, Winchester-style house, Rockland County, New York. I remember the first time I drove up to the Knickerbocker House. The narrow road wound through thick trees, and shadows from the branches danced across my windshield. Even before I saw the house, I felt a strange unease, like the air itself was heavier around this place. When I finally caught sight of the old Victorian mansion, my breath caught. Its tall, pointed roof and darkened windows gave it a watchful presence, and the peeling paint seemed to whisper forgotten stories. I parked my car and stepped onto the uneven stone pathway. Every footstep echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the walls of the empty street. I could feel my pulse quicken, a mixture of fear and curiosity driving me forward. The locals had warned me about this place: strange footsteps at night, shadows in windows, voices that didn't belong to anyone. Standing there, I could almost sense them, lingering, watching me, testing my courage. As I walked around the house, I noticed the intricate woodwork and faded carvings, beautiful yet eerie in the fading sunlight. A cold gust of wind rushed through the broken shutters, making the wooden door creak as if someone inside was breathing, waiting. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to leave, yet my curiosity held me in place. I imagined the families who had lived here, the secrets they took with them, and the stories that remained trapped within these walls. A sudden shadow moved across the porch, just at the corner of my vision. I spun around, but nothing was there. My heart raced, and a shiver ran down my spine. I could feel the energy of the house pressing against me, heavy and insistent, daring me to stay longer. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside felt magnified, like the house itself was alive and aware of my presence. Eventually, I took a hesitant step back, my hands clammy and legs shaky. The mansion seemed to grow darker as the evening settled, almost as if it was pulling the light from the sky. Even from a distance, I felt its weight, the echoes of footsteps and whispers that had been here for decades. Driving away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was still watching me, and every time I recall that day, a chill runs through me. The Knickerbocker House is more than a building, it's a living memory of history, mystery, and fear, impossible to forget once you've been near it. 4. Burn Bray Mansion, Glen Spey, upstate New York. I still remember the first time I reached Burn Bray Mansion. The road leading up to it was narrow and surrounded by dense trees, their branches swaying and casting strange shadows across the cracked pavement. Even before I saw the mansion, a feeling of unease settled deep in my chest. The air was colder here, heavier, almost as if the house itself was waiting, watching for me to arrive. When I finally laid eyes on the mansion, my stomach tightened. The building loomed tall, dark, and silent, its old bricks worn by decades of wind and rain. I could see the windows were grimy, and some were cracked, reflecting the dim light of the late afternoon. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back, but curiosity kept my feet moving. The stories I had read about shadow figures and strange knocking sounds suddenly felt real, tangible, pressing against my senses. As I stepped onto the front porch, the wood creaked under my weight, each groan echoing like a warning through the still air. I imagined the guests who had once stayed here, some claiming to have seen figures in the hallways, doors opening by themselves, or furniture moving on its own. A shiver ran down my spine, and my hands felt clammy as I reached for the railing, which seemed cold, almost alive, under my touch. I wandered slowly around the perimeter, my eyes scanning every darkened window. A sudden gust of wind slammed against the shutters, and for a brief moment, it felt like the mansion exhaled a sigh, acknowledging my presence. I thought I heard footsteps behind me, soft and deliberate, but when I spun around, nothing was there. The shadows seemed to move with a mind of their own, whispering secrets I couldn't hear, but could somehow feel. Eventually, I stepped back, my heart racing, every nerve alert. The mansion seemed to grow taller and darker as the sun dipped lower, the forest around it swallowing the fading light. Even as I drove away, I felt a lingering gaze on my back, like the house was not ready to let me leave. Burnbrae Mansion is not just a building, it is a presence, heavy and unshakable, carrying decades of mystery and unease that remain long after you leave. 5. The Shanley Hotel, Napanoch, upstate New York. I still remember the first night I spent at the Shanley Hotel. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt heavier, almost cold, even though it was summer. The lobby was quiet, too quiet, with shadows stretching across the walls like they were alive. I had read stories of over 30 spirits lingering here, but standing there, it felt as if they were watching me, silently counting my every move. My heart beat faster, and my hands trembled slightly as I took my first steps toward the old staircase. Every floorboard creaked under my weight, echoing through the empty hallways. I could feel the history of the hotel pressing against me, decades of energy trapped within its walls. Guests had reported seeing shadowy figures moving at the corner of their eyes, hearing whispers in empty rooms, and feeling sudden chills for no reason. I didn't want to believe it at first, but as I walked further into the hotel, I felt a cold draft that didn't match the summer heat, and I realized these stories might be true. In one of the upstairs hallways, I paused. The silence was broken by a soft knocking from behind a door. My pulse quickened, and I froze, unsure if I should investigate. The knocking stopped abruptly, leaving only the sound of my own rapid breathing. Shadows seemed to shift in ways that didn't make sense, stretching unnaturally across the walls. I felt a presence, close and unseen, as if someone, or something, was standing just behind me, watching me without making a sound. I moved to the window, hoping the view of the quiet town outside would calm me, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave. Every room I entered seemed to carry the weight of the past, the lives of guests who had felt the same unease, the lingering spirits who refused to rest. Even the furniture seemed charged, as if it held onto invisible energy that resisted being touched. By the time I left the Shanley Hotel, my mind was racing. My legs felt weak, my hands clammy, but I couldn't stop thinking about the presence that had followed me through those hallways. Even now, when I recall that night, a shiver runs down my spine. The Shanley Hotel isn't just a building, it's a vessel of restless energy, holding stories, secrets, and shadows that remain long after anyone leaves. 6. Dr. Best House and Medical Exhibit, Middleburg, New York. The first time I stepped into Dr. Best House and Medical Exhibit, I felt an immediate chill, even though it was a warm afternoon. The building stood quiet and still, but there was a heavy energy that pressed against me as soon as I walked in. I had read about the old medical instruments and the unclaimed bodies on display, but seeing them in person made my stomach tighten and my heart race. Each room seemed frozen in time, holding decades of fear and silent stories that refused to leave. I moved slowly down the narrow hallways, my footsteps echoing eerily. The smell of old wood and something faintly metallic made me uneasy. I imagined the patients who had once walked these floors, the doctors who had worked tirelessly, and the experiments that had left a mark on the house itself. My hands felt clammy as I reached out to touch a display, and I could swear I felt a slight vibration, almost like the house was alive and aware of my presence. As I walked into one of the main exhibit rooms, a sudden creak of a floorboard made me freeze. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it, but then another creak followed, soft yet deliberate. Shadows seemed to move unnaturally across the walls, and I felt a presence just behind me, watching silently. My pulse quickened, and I felt a cold sweat on my forehead. It was terrifying, yet I couldn't look away. The house had stories that demanded to be noticed, and every corner seemed to whisper secrets that I wasn't supposed to hear. I leaned closer to examine one of the old instruments, and the air around me grew heavier. It was as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake, to step too far into its history. My mind raced with thoughts of the lives that had ended here, and the energy that remained. Every shadow, every groan of the wooden floor, made my heart pound faster. By the time I left Dr. Best's house, my legs were shaky, and my hands still trembled. Even from outside, I felt the house watching, like it had marked me, knowing I had witnessed its lingering presence. That day taught me that some places are more than just buildings, they are vessels of memory, of fear, and of histories that refuse to be forgotten. Dr. Best's house is one of those rare places that stays with you, haunting your thoughts long after you leave. 7. Beardsley Castle, Little Falls, Upstate New York. The first time I arrived at Beardsley Castle, the sky was overcast, and the wind whispered through the trees surrounding the property. From the road, the castle looked imposing and unwelcoming, its stone walls dark and weathered with age. I could feel an unusual heaviness in the air as I stepped out of my car, like the building itself was aware of my presence. My heart began to race, but curiosity pushed me forward. Walking up the long, uneven driveway, I noticed the shadows shifting across the castle's exterior. The windows, some broken and others fogged with age, seemed like eyes watching me. Every creak of the wooden steps beneath my feet echoed far too loudly in the eerie silence. I had read stories about the apparitions here, the voices people claimed to hear, and now I felt the energy firsthand, pressing against me like a physical weight. Inside, the castle smelled of old wood, damp stone, and something faintly metallic. Each room was filled with relics of the past, and the shadows seemed to move independently of the flickering light. I froze for a moment when I thought I heard soft footsteps behind me, though I was completely alone. The sound stopped suddenly, leaving only my rapid breathing and the pounding of my heart. I couldn't tell if it was my imagination, or if something unseen was truly there. As I explored further, I noticed doors that would creak open on their own and mirrors that reflected not just my image but a subtle distortion that made me flinch. A sudden cold draft brushed past my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. Every instinct told me to leave, yet the fear mixed with fascination kept me moving, wanting to witness more of the castle's hidden presence. By the time I stepped outside again, dusk had fallen, and the castle seemed even darker, almost alive with the memories it held. Even from the driveway, I felt as though unseen eyes were following me, lingering as I got into my car. Beardsley Castle is not just a building, it is a living memory, filled with echoes of voices, shadows, and emotions that remain long after anyone has left. The fear it inspired stayed with me for days, a reminder that some places are haunted not by stories, but by the very essence of their history. 8. The Oliver House, Penn Yen, New York. The first time I set foot in the Oliver House, I felt an immediate sense of unease. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn. And the house looked older and more worn than any picture could capture. I had read stories about echoes, footsteps, and shadowy spirits here, but nothing prepared me for the feeling of standing right in front of it. My chest tightened, and a shiver ran down my spine as if the house itself was watching me, silently judging every step I took. I approached the front door cautiously. The wooden steps groaned under my weight, each creak echoing unnaturally in the quiet street. I could feel a cold draft brush past my neck, and I paused, half expecting someone, or something, to be standing behind me. The windows were dark, reflecting the trees and my own nervous reflection back at me, but I could swear I saw movement inside. My pulse quickened, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old wood and dust. The floors creaked with every step, and shadows seemed to stretch across the walls unnaturally. I imagined the people who had once lived here, and the stories they might have left behind, echoes of laughter, whispers, and perhaps something darker that remained trapped in the house. A sudden soft thump from upstairs made me jump. My hands felt clammy, and my heart raced. I froze, listening intently, but there was only silence again. As I explored further, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. I passed rooms where the sunlight barely reached, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow pass across a doorway. My instinct screamed at me to leave, yet fascination and fear intertwined, keeping me moving. Every corner of the house seemed alive, carrying memories and energy that refused to fade. When I finally stepped outside, the sun was low, and the house seemed to loom over me even more, dark and silent, as if it had absorbed the day's light. Even from the street, I felt its presence, heavy and unyielding. The Oliver House is not just a building, it's a vessel of history, emotion, and lingering energy. The chill it left in me stayed long after I drove away, a haunting reminder that some places do not forget the lives they once held.